Welcome to Bodcast, the Business of Dentistry podcast, brought to you by Practice Plan. Bodcast delivers the best business advice, real-life stories, and practical hints and tips to make your practice a more profitable and sustainable business. And now, here's your host.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Bodcast. My name's Fern and today I'm really thrilled to be joined by Leticia Casanova from Gold for Kids. Hello.
Hello, Fern. Thank you for having me this morning.
Thank you for joining us. Would you like to introduce yourself and just tell us a bit about what you do and about Gold for Kids?
Sure. So I'm a periodontist. I'm originally from Spain, and I trained both in Spain for my undergrad, and then I went to New York University to do my postgrad in periodontics. And I also did some other work during my PhD in diabetes and periodontal disease. And throughout that whole time, I knew something was missing in terms of my fulfillment. But anyway, you put it back in the back burner and you get on with life. I met my husband while we were both at NYU in New York, and then we relocated to London, where we started working for other practices as associates. And then eventually in 2013, we started our practice, and that's when we came across the waste metal that is produced at a dental practice. At the time, I didn't know that this stuff had value, but my husband did. So he said, just keep it there. Don't do anything with it. We'll figure out what we want to do with it. And so we just kept working, organizing our practice, London Periodontics, Implants and Dentistry. And in 2016, I became a mother for the first time. And I don't know if you know a little bit about it, but basically it's a full roller coaster ride. And I was so sensitive to everything uh, going on in my life and going outside of my life. So I couldn't really look at the news and just be ignoring the facts that were happening for small children in particular. So then out of that, we decided to try and start a project to help children living in underprivileged circumstances to try and bridge that gap and not be just observing, but be part of the solution. And so that's how we then mm, basically combined the metal that we were storing in our practice, the precious metal that we were storing in our practice. We decided to start melting it to raise funds towards these children's charities. And at the beginning, it was really informal. Obviously, I tried to speak to some people to ask if they wanted to donate their waste metal, but some people made it quite formal. So they were like, "Yeah, give me a pamphlet." Yeah, send me the website. And I didn't have any of that at the time. So some friends, a couple of friends, donated their waste metal just on face value. And so between the three of us, we raised £5,000. And we thought, okay, that's good. And so that gave us the background to be able to register Gold for Kids as a charity, because you need to have done some work, and the threshold is £5,000. So that's how that all started in 2018.
Wow, that sounds so interesting and something so different as well. How does it actually work then? You sort of vaguely said about, you get them waste metals and you melt them down, but is there any more you can tell us about how it actually works?
Absolutely. So at a dental practice, traditionally, we've all had crown and bridge waste metal, because when you replace a crown, what do you do with the old crown? Or when a tooth is too poor to continue restoring, eventually you remove it, right? And it has the crown on it. So what do you do with that crown? You normally store it in a jar. And traditionally, a metal scrap company would come into the practice and would pay some money to the practice, which would be an average of what they would think that metal is worth, depending on the weight. But obviously, these are companies that are profitable companies. And so they will give a percentage of what that metal is worth because they have to pay all the people that go around practices. And so the practice would then keep that money either for, reinvest it into the practice, or they would keep it into a pot for entertainment or Christmas parties, etc. And what we've wanted to do is come away from that um, tradition, if you like, which we thought was wrong because the metal doesn't belong to the practice, it belongs to the patient because they once paid money for that crown. Um and they always feel a bit disheartened as well when they have to have a crown redone that they've already invested in. So we thought, well, if we then give the patient a voice about what they would like to do with it, if you give it back to the patient can't do much with one single crown. But if you then tell the patient, would you like to donate it to charity? Surely they'll be happy. And that's what we started finding out in our practice. People were quite involved. And in fact, we started with old broken jewelry and crown and bridge work. And some patients brought crown and bridge work that belonged to their mother, and it was in a little box that the mother had stored from when she became a dentulous, for example, and they didn't know what to do with it. Another patient brought 5,800 pounds worth of jewelry that we then sold or melted. So if it was in good condition, um, we liaised with a jeweler to sell these antique pieces at better price. And if it was broken and wasn't worth so much, we then melted it. And so some people have brought out of fashion jewelry, a chain that is broken, the back of an earring, all those type of metals. And yeah, so that's how we then amalgamate all the metals. We then go to the place that these scrap metal companies go to do a melt and assay. So they melt all the metals and they assay. So they assess what type of metal is contained in these bars that are produced after the melt. And normally it'll be a combination of gold, platinum, palladium, and silver. And platinum and palladium have become more valuable since cell phones use part of these metals and so on. So gold has always been very valuable, but even more now. So then we then take those bars and we sell them to the melt and assay company at market value. So, for example, the last melt was 6,180 pounds, something like this. And that's
Wow.
how then we get the cash to then distribute to give grants to charities that are doing really good work.
Oh, that is just so incredible. Do you know how much you've raised in total so far?
Yeah, it's coming now to almost 60,000 pounds. So
Wow.
last time it was around 53,000 pounds. And now the last melt was 6,000. So it'll be 58 something something. So almost 60,000 pounds. Yeah.
That's brilliant.
And
And
that's just from a handful of practices because we haven't really been able to penetrate in the UK market very well because of the lack of resources.
yeah, oh, that's brilliant. And what sort of projects does the money go towards?
So all sorts of projects. So the characteristics of the charities need to be basically UK based charities that help children between 8 and 18 years old and that have a purpose of improving children's quality of life within the realm of poverty and giving right within the realm of poverty and underprivileged children. So for example, the very first charity that we donated to was Barnardo's. Then the next year we donated to NSPCC. And then after that, when we started having a little bit more money, then we started creating the portfolio. So then again, Barnardo's got a little bit of money, NSPCC got a little bit of money, and then we included Changing Lives for Good, which is a smaller charity that does both coaching and starts hubs to provide lunches during school holidays, because many children depend on that meal for school holiday for school. But when everybody's on holiday for the whole 6 weeks of summer and half term and Easter, what's happening there? So they create hubs, and it's crazy when you start understanding facts about you know, you only need, I think it's £3,000 to start a hub. So then that really gets you committed, because you're like, I can't believe it only costs that, and we don't have 1,000 hubs. Like, what's going on, right? And then we started donating to them punk against poverty, and then, you know, all these names of charities. One that is Felix's project, that basically collects food that is in good condition, but that is either otherwise going to go to waste, and then takes it to different places so that that food doesn't really become wasteful. Um, Clothes for uniforms, all sorts. So there's about, right now there's 11 charities that we support, and around 33 practices that support goals for kids. But only 33. Can you imagine what the
Wow.
potential is?
Yeah, that's incredible that all those different charities get to benefit from this, and yeah, only from 30 so practices.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's just yeah, brilliant.
Because there are
Um,
500 practices in the UK,
oh wow,
right?
okay.
And so the idea is that if we really all came together and jumped in this wagon of becoming, you know, very philanthropic as a community, and trying to step out of our cubicles, of our dental cubicles, to do something good in our community, right? We all went into dentistry because we wanted to help people. Some probably would have gone because it's also very profitable, but most of us went because of a combination of both. So it seemed like a good idea. But one of the things that happens within dentistry is that you are in your cubicle, and so you're always sort of on the teeth environment, isn't it? So it's a good opportunity to get out of your, you know, with your skill, or with what's happening in your practice. In this case, with your waste, you can actually help outside of your practice. So it's maximizing the amount of opportunities of helping people. And we thought, if we all came together as a community, there's so many dentists out there that don't even know about this project, that either give it to the scrap metal company and are pocketing money that it doesn't really belong to them, or some of them are still throwing this crown and bridge work because, like me, didn't know that it had value. So it's a good way of recycling this metal, we think.
Yeah, like you say, it's great because it's a great way of giving back to the community, and also it's also sustainability and recycling for the practice. So two great, you know, wins there for the practice. Um,
Yes.
so finally, then I suppose ideally you'd like to get more practices involved and dentists involved. So yeah, how can people get involved?
So the best way would be to contact us via our website, which is www.goldforkids.org, and just fill in the contact form. That would be probably the easiest. And there's several ways in which they can contribute. So they can become donors themselves, or they can also become ambassadors, where they tell other colleagues of theirs about this project, because somebody might be listening to the podcast, because but their friend might not have listened to this podcast. So they can become ambassadors as well, and they can donate both their crown and bridge work, or for example, waste or broken jewelry from their patients if they wanted. But they could also donate their TCO's time, for example. So they could also go into a program where we will teach their TCO about sales, and give them a script, and they can then invest maybe 2 hours a month on giving practices phone calls to see if they've already accumulated enough, if we could our, if we could make a collection, because these metal scrap companies, obviously they're profitable, so they have resources, they have people that literally knock on doors, give the dental practice lunch or donuts in exchange for this crown and bridge work, and then they give them a little bit of money. So what's not to like about that? But we don't have that capacity. We don't have the people to go knocking on doors, so we have to do it obviously through the telephone. And when you hear you're a charity, they don't want to hear anymore. So it's about really getting the word out there, and just understanding that Goal for Kids is a good thing, basically. It's a good thing to jump on. We're all resistant to change, but for this particular instance, I think it's good. It's like when we were all in paper, and then we moved on to into what's it called, onto computer softwares for all our files. That created some resistance. Some people didn't want to join that wagon. This is another wagon that is a good one to jump on.
Yeah. And it sounds like it's something like the whole team can get involved with then, because there's many different ways to get involved. It's not just for the
Absolutely.
dentist. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we're always looking out for volunteers to help us go to the dental shows. So Kimberly, one of my colleagues who's also been involved, Kimberly McGregor, one of my colleagues who's been really involved in Goal for Kids, and I were last Friday at the dental show, for example. But it would be really nice if we could, anybody who has a bit of a light spirit and enjoys talking to people could go. So that could be a dental nurse, a hygienist, whoever really, a receptionist.
Fantastic. Well, it sounds really, really interesting, and the work and the money you've raised is just incredible. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll put the details below for how to get in contact in the podcast copy. But thank you so much, Leticia, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you, Fern. Thank you so much for inviting us this morning to talk about Goal for Kids.